Continue, of course, with our focus on the safety at schools. Let's bring in the Executive Director of Teachers Organization Naptosa, Basil Manuel, who is joining us via Zoom. Mr. Manuel, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Just hearing one of those parents, outside the Brakpan Magistrates Court, just trying to understand how a pupil who doesn't attend that particular school was able to make it into the school and stab a pupil there with security around, etc. Any concern as a teachers' union, especially when you hear incidents of such?
Absolutely. We are terribly concerned about this. And of course, we've highlighted over a long period of time the dire state of security at schools. Now, it doesn't mean only people security, but it also means the fencing, the perimeter, etc. But then added to that is the respect for the school itself. When people take their fights to the school, it shows a blatant disrespect there. And now look what has happened. We've seen the life of a child lost. We've seen a mother losing a child. And of course, this has upset the entire community in that schooling has now come to a standstill, which is what we can least afford. And we mustn't minimize it by only focusing on the return to school because somebody has died. What were the root causes and how do we fix it? Fix it permanently. Now, I know that the department has done many things, but of course, the spread of schools, the number of schools, makes it difficult to police every place. But when security was there, when a stranger entered and nobody stopped this, it brings into question a whole lot of things. Security, both for children and teachers, is a serious, serious matter.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go to the other school that is also into focus and that made headlines since Friday is about that teacher who, in protecting himself and his colleagues in the staff room, shot dead an intruder at that particular school on Friday afternoon. So just talk to me about adequate infrastructure, physical infrastructure at schools that could actually also assist us in dealing with some of the violence that we see in our schools.
Absolutely. At first, we've been in discussion with the department over a number of years about improving the physical security at schools. Schools must be fenced. Schools must have a system in place where there's a vetting of anybody and everybody who comes into schools. We don't want even a parent entering and becoming physical with somebody. And we know sometimes people get worked up. But if you at first don't have a perimeter fence, you've already lost the plot. Secondly, you can have the perimeter fence, but without the other necessary checks and balances, we will still not be winning. And then I know some provinces like Mpumalanga has even got metal scanners and so on, which also, of course, add to it. But we know the problem with that. Light's not working, the thing isn't working. Alternatively, just simply cost. But we've got to start with the perimeter and ensure that the children are separated, the teachers are separated from people who come into school so that they are managed by that entry office before they have access. And access can only be with permission.
And Mr. Manuel, have you, are you concerned at all about a teacher having a gun at school? I mean, how he was able to access that gun to eventually shoot that intruder. Is it a case of teachers also trying to protect themselves? But at the same time, in South Africa, isn't there a policy that says, weapons of that nature shouldn't be in an environment like that?
Absolutely. I'm puzzled by the fact that there was a gun within reach. And whilst people are trying to say that the means justify the action, I want to say when there is something like a gun in access, in easy access, somebody's going to try and use it. If not the owner, then somebody else. And of course, people can get dispossessed of these things. A dangerous weapon shouldn't be allowed onto the premises by anybody. But there's a second lesson here. Are we so desperate that people are going to try and smuggle these things on because they are afraid? And I hope that that can't be where we've reached. I know there are difficult to teach at schools, and our members are there, and our members are telling us how difficult it is to access certain places. But as Naptosa, we've got to appeal to people. We cannot be party to bringing dangerous weapons onto the premises, where those very weapons then become an issue of, I've got this, so let me use it. And then a life is lost. Yes, some people feel protected. However, we still can't justify it when a person has lost their lives.
And just lastly, Mr. Manuel, I mean, there's many things that the department, for instance, has initiated. Since 2015, for instance, it developed their whole national school safety framework back in 2015, but nothing seems to be yielding any results. I don't know if it's because we are reporting on school safety and the violence that we see in South African schools more often, or are the statistics really looking bad?
Yes, we need to be fair to the system too. Of course, any life lost is a tragedy for everybody involved, even the department. But in the grand scheme of things, I think we can say that the policy is starting to bear fruit. There are far fewer incidents. And when you look at the sheer quantum of schools versus the incidents, the one pales into insignificance. But then you can't make the life of a child insignificant. We would like to eradicate it completely, but that is a tall ask. And yes, it is these incidents that pop out that are then reported on, and it creates the impression of general mayhem. But there isn't general mayhem, to be honestly fair. And if you look at it, one school out of a few thousand doesn't suggest mayhem. But there are things that can improve, because technologies change every day. The methodologies that even the child or the adult with criminal intent uses changes every day. So we can't rest on our laurels and say we have a policy that's good enough. We've got to be checking all the time. And then communities are changing. Our biggest problem is that our communities are so violent, and to carry violence into the school has become just so easy.
Yeah, and that was what I was going to ask you, but I've run out of time. I mean, is it fair to put the blame squarely on the department? They cannot. We are all stakeholders when it comes to the youth in South Africa, and however we act, even outside of school, might also influence their behavior. Thank you very much for speaking to us, Basil Manuel. He's Naptosa's Executive Director.